In the quiet early hours of the morning at General Hospital, a moment that should have marked relief became the epicenter of a deeply personal and long-buried storm. Rocco Falconeri, still recovering from alcohol poisoning, stirred awake just as tension in his hospital room reached its peak. At his bedside, Dante stood firm, his voice low but edged with fury as he confronted Giovanni, better known to his family as Gio. The accusation was clear and damning. Gio had left Rocco unsupervised at a party where alcohol flowed freely, even though Rocco was still legally a minor. It was a grave mistake with nearly fatal consequences. But what neither Dante nor Gio expected was Rocco's reaction, not to the confrontation, but to Gio himself. In a voice fraught with disbelief and rising panic, Rocco screamed, "Dad, do you know who he is?" The weight of that question shattered the room's tense silence. Within seconds, Rocco collapsed, his body overwhelmed by emotional shock and lingering toxins. Alarms blared as nurses rushed in to stabilize him and wheel him toward the emergency room for an emergency gastric lavage. The scene unraveled in chaos, but outside the door, another life-changing realization was dawning. Just beyond the hospital room's threshold, Lulu Spencer stood frozen, stunned by what she had just heard. Her heart raced, not just from maternal panic, but from the impact of Rocco's chilling question. He knew, somehow, impossibly, Rocco knew that Gio was more than just a reckless friend or half-brother. He had seen through the veil of secrets and recognized the hidden truth. Gio was Dante's son. Lulu's mind raced through the implications. How could Rocco have learned this? She had been meticulous in guarding that secret ever since she discovered it, especially from Dante, who remained unaware of Gio's true identity. The origins of this tangled web stretched back years, to a brief but passionate liaison between Dante and Brooke Lynn. Their affair had been dismissed at the time as inconsequential, a fleeting moment overshadowed by their complicated personal lives. Brooke had kept her pregnancy secret, choosing to raise Gio with the support of her family while staying silent about his paternity. The decision, though rooted in her own survival and fears of rejection, had created a living lie, one that now threatened to implode with catastrophic force. As Rocco's fate hung in the balance and the hospital buzzed with activity, Dante remained in the hallway, still unaware of the full truth but haunted by the intensity of his son's outburst. His paternal instincts screamed that something deeper was at play. He had always sensed a strange connection to Gio, an unspoken familiarity, a resonance he couldn't explain. But until now, he had dismissed it as the natural pull of mentoring a young man in need. Now, however, doubt flooded his thoughts like a rising tide. Meanwhile, Lulu stood in the hospital's family lounge, replaying every word Rocco had ever said about Gio, every glance, every hesitation. It was clear now that Rocco had pieced it together. Perhaps it was something Brooke had accidentally revealed, or maybe Rocco had overheard a conversation never meant for his ears. However it happened, the truth had reached him, and in his fragile state, it had done more damage than she feared. Lulu was now faced with an impossible decision. She could continue to shield the truth, hoping that Rocco's trauma and the chaos of the moment would suppress the memory. Or she could finally bring everything into the open, tear down the wall of secrets that had protected and poisoned them in equal measure, and allow Dante to face the full consequences of his past. But telling the truth wouldn't only affect Dante, it would unravel Brooke's carefully constructed narrative and force Gio into a reality he had never asked for. Across town, Brooke Lynn sensed the shift in the air long before she received Lulu's call. There had always been a part of her that feared this moment, the day the secret she buried would claw its way to the surface. When her phone rang and she heard Lulu's shaking voice, the dread turned palpable. Brooke listened as Lulu carefully explained what Rocco had said. There was no anger in Lulu's voice, just exhaustion, and an unspoken question. What do we do now? Brooke's answer was simple, but heavy with finality. We tell them. There was no longer a way to avoid it. The fallout might be catastrophic, but continuing to lie would only deepen the damage. Back at the hospital, Rocco was resting after the emergency procedure. Doctors reported that he would recover, but warned that the emotional trauma he had endured could not be ignored. He would need therapy, support, and, most importantly, honesty. And honesty was a luxury no one in this family had indulged in for far too long. Later that day, Dante sat by Rocco's bedside, still trying to process the pieces. Lulu walked in, her expression worn with the weight of the moment. She sat beside Dante and looked him in the eyes, not as a co-parent, but as someone about to detonate the truth. She began slowly, choosing her words with the precision of someone disarming a bomb. She spoke about Brooke, about the night that changed everything, and finally, about Gio. When the words left her lips, "Gio is your son," Dante didn't speak. He simply stared ahead, as if the world around him had stopped. His mind reeled, reaching back through memories now recast in a new light. Every time Gio had reached out, every time Dante had scolded or protected him, all of it suddenly made a terrible, perfect sense. Elsewhere in the hospital, Gio paced the hallway, racked with guilt over Rocco's collapse and uncertain about the confrontation that was surely coming. He didn't know that his entire life was about to change. That the man he had come to respect and fear in equal measure was not just a mentor, but his father. In a matter of hours, the fragile foundation of several lives had cracked open. Lies had been exposed, relationships would be tested, and identities reshaped. As the sun set over Port Charles, the walls of General Hospital held more than patients and prescriptions. They held secrets ready to break free. And in the days to come, nothing for Dante, Brooke, Lulu, Gio, or Rocco would ever be the same again. Would you like a continuation of what happens next once Dante and Gio finally face each other with the truth between them?